My mom said I was the dumb one, and she was going to make sure I stayed that way. My mother assigned each of her children an identity at birth that we could never escape. Natalie was the smart one, Eden was the pretty one, Miles was the strong one, and I was the dumb one. Mom didn't just label us. She'd punish us whenever we were good at the wrong things. She called it maintaining the family ecosystem. The assignments had been made within minutes of our births based on Mom's first impressions. Natalie came out quiet and observant, so Mom declared her the smart one. Eden had delicate features even as a newborn, earning her pretty. Miles was a large baby who cried loudly, making him strong. I was born last and smallest, struggling to breathe, and Mom decided that meant I was dumb. She'd written these roles on our birth certificates like medical conditions. Dad left when he realized she was dead serious about this stuff. He couldn't stand watching what she was doing to us. Mom took him leaving as proof her system worked better without him around. When Natalie struggled with a math problem, Mom would solve it for her, then beat me if I tried to help because dumb children don't understand mathematics. When I grew taller than Eden, Mom forced me to hunch constantly until my spine literally curved because the dumb one couldn't also be tall. She yanked me out of school after 3rd grade claiming I was too stupid to learn, but really she'd panicked when I started reading above grade level. Miles wasn't allowed to cry even with broken bones because the strong one doesn't feel pain. When Eden gained normal teenage weight, Mom put her on extreme diets until she fainted daily because the pretty one had to stay thin no matter what. Mom got worse as we got older and started showing talents that didn't match our labels. She fed Eden pills that made her hair fall out when she showed athletic talent because pretty girls don't sweat. She forced Miles to lift weights from 6 years old until his joints were basically destroyed, making sure he'd need a cane by 20. When Natalie showed artistic talent, Mom burned her paintings right in front of her. But I got it worst because intelligence was harder to destroy than beauty or strength. Mom made me take pills that left me dizzy and confused, telling everyone they were for my severe learning disability that I didn't actually have. My siblings and I tried protecting each other in this nightmare. Natalie would secretly teach me from her textbooks after midnight, risking Mom's rage if we got caught. Eden would steal my pills and switch them with vitamins whenever she could. Miles would pretend to chase me away from his weights but actually help me exercise. We created this whole secret language to communicate without Mom noticing. We were prisoners together, each dealing with our curse while trying to help the others with theirs. Our first escape attempt was when I turned 15. Miles had saved money from odd jobs and we planned to run away together, but Mom had put trackers in our phones and caught us at the train station. Her punishment was brutal. Miles had to carry 100-pound bags everywhere until his back gave out. Natalie had to solve equations for 16 hours straight until she collapsed. Eden had to stare in mirrors listing her flaws for days, and I had to write, "I am too stupid to think for myself," 10,000 times. After that, she moved us to this isolated farmhouse and told everyone we died in a fire. 3 years later, I found online courses and started secretly studying while Mom thought I was looking at picture books. My siblings created these elaborate distractions so I could learn. Natalie would fake academic crises that needed Mom's full attention. Eden would have beauty emergencies that took hours to fix. Miles would pretend to hurt himself in ways that required Mom's constant care. Thanks to them, I finished my GED and applied to colleges using the library computer. When my acceptance letter from State University showed up at our P.O. box, Miles grabbed it and we all cried together in the barn. We planned my escape for months. The night I left, Natalie faked a seizure from overtaxing her brilliant mind, while Eden smashed a mirror and threatened to destroy her face. During the chaos, Miles smuggled me out in his truck and drove me to campus. For one amazing week, I lived in a dorm and went to classes like a normal person. I picked my own clothes, talked in class, made friends who knew me as just Lila. Then Mom called. "Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" she said, weirdly calm. "The school called about your medical records. I've already withdrawn you. Miles is bringing you home." I turned around and there was Miles in my doorway looking sick with guilt. Behind him stood Mom holding a medical bag. "I'm sorry," he whispered. She threatened to blind Eden and cripple Natalie's hands. Mom smiled while preparing a syringe. "You've upset the whole ecosystem by trying to be smart," she said, walking toward me. "We need to fix that overactive brain permanently. Dr. Benson is meeting us at the house. He does special lobotomies that target specific parts of the brain." As Miles grabbed my arms and Mom raised the needle, she said the words that still haunt me. "Don't worry, sweetie. You won't even remember wanting to be anything but dumb once we're done scooping out the problem areas." The needle moved toward my skin, and I watched the clear liquid inside while Miles's grip got tighter around both my arms. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might explode as the metal point touched my arm. That's when the banging started on my dorm door, loud enough to shake the whole frame. Mom jerked the needle back and shoved it into her medical bag just as the door flew open. Campus security officer Calliope Nash rushed in with her hand on her radio, looking at all three of us frozen in weird positions. Miles still had my arms pinned behind me, and Mom was zipping her bag closed while trying to look normal. Nash stepped between us and pulled Miles's hands off me, then moved me behind her toward the door. My whole body shook so hard I could barely stand, and my teeth chattered like I was freezing. Mom started talking in her calm doctor voice about how worried she was about my mental health and how I needed help. She said I'd been having episodes and making up stories about the family. Nash looked at the red marks on my arms where Miles had grabbed me, then at Mom's medical bag sitting on my desk. I tried to talk, but my voice came out all broken and weird from the shaking. Nash asked me what was in the bag, and I managed to say the word syringe between chatters. Mom said it was just medication for my condition, but Nash wasn't buying it. She called for backup on her radio and stood blocking the doorway so nobody could leave. Mom tried to push past her, but Nash put her hand up and said everyone needed to stay put until this got sorted out. 2 more security guards showed up, and Nash told them to watch Mom and Miles while she talked to me. I told her about the needle and the lobotomy Mom had threatened, the words tumbling out all mixed up and panicked. Nash's face went from concerned to horrified as she called for an ambulance on her radio. Mom kept trying to interrupt and explain, but Nash told her to be quiet. The ambulance arrived in what felt like forever, but was probably only 10 minutes. The EMTs checked me over and found the tiny red mark where the needle had touched my skin. They loaded me into the ambulance while Nash told Mom and Miles they'd need to come to the station for questioning. At the emergency room, Dr. Leora Kimura examined the injection site and took pictures of it with a special camera. She measured the red marks on my arms and documented everything in her computer. She ordered blood tests right away to check if any drugs had gotten into my system. The nurse drew what felt like 20 tubes of blood while Dr. Kimura asked me questions about what happened. I told her about the pills Mom had been making me take for years, the ones that made me dizzy and confused. Dr. Kimura's face got more and more worried as I explained about the fake learning disability. She ordered more tests, including hair samples that could show drug exposure going back months. The nurse cut small pieces of my hair from different spots on my head and sealed them them in evidence bags. They made me pee in a cup too, and took swabs from inside my mouth. Dr. Kimura said they'd run every test possible to find out what Mom had been giving me. I spent the whole night in the hospital getting tests and scans done. They did a brain scan to check for any damage from the long-term drugging. The next morning, a woman named Leandra McGuire from the university came to see me. She introduced herself as a case manager and sat down with a thick folder of papers. She explained that the registrar's office had found the documents Mom used to withdraw me from the school. The papers claimed I had severe cognitive impairment and couldn't function in an academic setting. Leandra said the documents were clearly forged since I'd been attending classes just fine for a week. She helped me fill out something called a FERPA block that would stop Mom from accessing any of my school records. We spent an hour going through different forms for campus safety measures. Leandra started the paperwork for a no-contact order that would ban Mom from campus. She said it would take a few days to process, but campus security already had Mom's picture. I used my phone to text my siblings our old code word that meant, "Are you okay?" Eden texted back that Mom was home and screaming at everyone about how I'd ruined everything. She said Mom was on the phone with lawyers trying to file for guardianship over me. Mom was claiming I was mentally incompetent and needed someone to make decisions for me. Eden warned me that Mom had already called 3 different doctors trying to get them to sign papers about my supposed disability. There's something deeply unsettling about how methodical this mother is with her control system, assigning roles at birth based on first impressions. I'm curious why she's so committed to these rigid categories that she'd actually drug her own kids and physically harm them. Leandra called someone from legal aid, and within an hour, an attorney named Linnea Phelps showed up. She was young but seemed really sharp and took notes on everything I told her. She said we needed to document every single thing to fight the guardianship attempt. She had me write down everything I could remember about the pills and the abuse. We made lists of all the times Mom had hurt us for being good at the wrong things. Linnea said my college acceptance and grades would help prove I wasn't mentally impaired. Detective Lucinda Bridges came that afternoon to take my official statement about what happened in the dorm. She had me go through everything step by step while she recorded it on a small device. She asked about the long-term pattern of abuse, and I told her about the roles Mom assigned us. She wanted to know about any proof I might have of what Mom had been doing to us. I remembered the birth certificates Miles had mentioned once, where Mom had written our assigned roles. Detective Bridges wrote that down and said she'd look into getting copies from the county records office. I spent the next 2 days going through everything I had, pulling together my GED certificate from the folder I'd hidden in the barn, printing out my college acceptance letter at the library computer, and taking screenshots of every text message my siblings had sent me over the years about what Mom was doing to us. Linnea sat with me in the hospital cafeteria sorting through it all, making copies of everything and organizing it into different folders labeled educational competence and pattern of abuse and medical evidence. She kept shaking her head at some of the messages, especially the ones where Eden described being forced to throw up after eating normal meals, or Natalie talking about having to pretend she couldn't understand basic concepts around Mom. The financial aid office called while we were working, and the woman on the phone sounded confused when she explained my funding was frozen because Mom had contacted them claiming I was mentally incompetent to manage money. Leandra met me there the next morning, and we sat in those uncomfortable plastic chairs while she filled out dependency override paperwork, explaining to the financial aid director about the situation and showing him the police report from the dorm incident. He said it would take weeks to process, but promised to expedite it given the circumstances. Mom started sending emails to my school account that afternoon, long rambling messages about how I was destroying the family ecosystem and how the dumb one accepting their place was essential for everyone's well-being. She wrote about how Natalie's intelligence would suffer without contrast, how Eden's beauty meant nothing if everyone was equal, how Miles's strength came from protecting the weak one. Linnea told me to save every single email but not respond, said these messages were perfect evidence of Mom's abusive mindset and would help our case. I forwarded them all to a separate folder and tried not to read them too closely because they made my hands shake. Dr. Kimura called 3 days later with the blood test results, her voice careful as she explained they'd found traces of sedatives in my system consistent with long-term exposure, specifically a type commonly used to treat severe anxiety, but that would cause confusion and cognitive impairment in someone who didn't need them. She was ordering hair follicle testing that could show drug exposure going back months or even years, and she said this evidence could be crucial for criminal charges against Mom for poisoning or assault. That same evening, Miles called me sobbing so hard I could barely understand him at first. He kept saying he was sorry over and over before finally getting out that Mom was making him choose between helping her bring me home or letting her hurt Eden and Natalie worse than ever before. His voice cracked as he told me she'd hired someone, some guy who finds people who don't want to be found, and this person was already tracking my location through my phone or computer or something. I could hear Mom in the background telling him to stop being weak, that the strong one doesn't cry over necessary discipline. Detective Bridges scheduled a meeting for the next day to discuss getting a restraining order against Mom, explaining that between the assault attempt in my dorm, the stalking behavior with the tracker she'd mentioned finding, and the documented pattern of abuse we were establishing, we should have enough for at least a temporary protective order. We met at the police station where she had me fill out more forms, describing every incident I could remember of Mom hurting me or threatening me or controlling my life. 3 days later, we went to the courthouse for the temporary restraining order hearing, and of course, Mom showed up looking perfectly put together in a navy suit with her hair pulled back, telling the judge in this calm, reasonable voice that I was delusional and had always had mental problems that required constant supervision. But then the judge looked at the medical evidence Dr. Kimura had sent over, read through the emails Mom had sent me about the ecosystem, saw the photos Officer Nash had taken of the marks on my arms from the dorm incident, and his face got harder and harder. He granted a 2-week temporary restraining order and scheduled a hearing for a permanent one, warning Mom that any contact with me would result in arrest. Mom started using other people to contact me within hours of leaving the courthouse, having cousins I hadn't heard from in years suddenly message me about how I was breaking Mom's heart, having old family friends call the dorm phone to tell me I was being selfish and destroying my family. Linnea documented every single contact as a violation of the spirit, if not the letter of the restraining order, building our case that Mom couldn't respect boundaries even with legal consequences hanging over her. Then someone posted my dorm address online on some forum about problem children who abandoned their families, claiming I was a dangerous mentally ill person who'd left my poor mother to deal with my siblings alone after years of sacrifice. Campus IT helped me document the doxing, taking screenshots and tracing IP addresses, while security started doing extra patrols near near my building and checking IDs of anyone who didn't look like a student. The university issued an official no trespass order against Mom the next day after the doxing incident, with Officer Nash personally driving out to deliver it to Mom at the farmhouse, and warning her that any appearance on campus would result in immediate arrest and prosecution for criminal trespass. 2 days later, I found a small package stuffed into my mailbox between bills and campus flyers. Inside was a thumb drive with a sticky note in Miles's handwriting that just said evidence. I plugged it into my laptop and found scanned copies of all 4 of our birth certificates. My hands started shaking when I saw what Mom had written on each one. Right there in the official boxes for medical conditions, she'd written our assigned roles in her perfect cursive handwriting. Natalie's said smart one, exceptional cognitive function. Eden's said pretty one, aesthetic priority. Miles's said strong one, physical dominance required. Mine said dumb one, severely limited capacity. She'd literally put these labels on our legal documents like they were real medical diagnoses. I printed copies and ran to Linnea's office without even grabbing my coat. She took one look at the birth certificates and her face went white. "This is premeditated abuse documented from birth," she said. "I've never seen anything this clear in 20 years of practice." She immediately started making copies for our case file and said this would be the centerpiece of our permanent restraining order hearing. That same afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text from Eden using our old code. When I translated it, my stomach dropped. She'd fainted at the farmhouse, and Mom had to take her to urgent care. The doctor there noticed she was severely underweight and asked about eating habits. Mom told them Eden was just stressed because her troubled sister had abandoned the family and was making false accusations. Eden said the doctor looked suspicious, but didn't push it since Mom was right there the whole time. I texted Eden back asking if she could get copies of those medical records. She was scared, but said she'd try since Mom's treatment was getting worse every day. Mom was making her weigh herself 3 times daily now and cutting her food portions even smaller. The next morning, Detective Bridges called with unexpected news. A neighbor from near the farmhouse had seen news coverage about the investigation and contacted the police. This woman said she'd heard strange screaming from our property for years and noticed medical supply trucks making deliveries way too often for a normal family. She'd always wondered what was happening, but Mom had told everyone we were homeschooled special needs children who required constant medical care. Bridges was adding the neighbor's statement to the growing pile of evidence against Mom. Linnea decided it was time to go after Dr. Benson too. She filed a formal complaint with the state medical board about his involvement in Mom's lobotomy threats. Even if he hadn't actually done anything yet, just planning such a procedure on a healthy person would violate every medical ethics standard that existed. The medical board confirmed they'd open an investigation and would subpoena his patient records. 3 days later, Linnea called with bad news. Mom had filed for emergency guardianship over me, claiming I was profoundly impaired and a danger to myself without constant supervision. The court scheduled an evaluation for the following week. Linnea fought hard and got them to agree to use an independent evaluator instead of the doctor Mom wanted to use. Miles dropping off that thumb drive is like finding the villain's diary where they wrote evil plan on the cover. Mom literally labeled her kids like produce at the grocery store on their birth certificates. She coached me on what to expect and said to just be myself and answer honestly. The evaluation took place in a small office at the courthouse. The evaluator was a woman in her 50s who seemed kind but thorough. I spent 3 hours answering questions, doing basic cognitive tests, explaining my education history, and describing the abuse. She had me solve math problems, read passages, and explain them, and demonstrate that I understood abstract concepts. When I showed her my GED certificate and college acceptance letter, she looked shocked. "Your mother claims you have the mental capacity of a young child," she said carefully. I showed her the birth certificate with Mom's handwriting labeling me as the dumb one from birth. The evaluator took detailed notes and said she'd need time to review all the evidence before making her recommendation to the court. Meanwhile, Leandra had been working on getting me mental health support. She connected me with a support group for survivors of family abuse that met weekly on campus. There was a huge waiting list for individual therapy, but at least the group gave me somewhere to talk to people who understood. The first meeting was hard, but hearing other people's stories made me feel less alone and less crazy. One woman there had escaped a similar situation where her parents assigned her the role of family failure. That night, Miles texted me something that made me cry. He'd gone to a clinic and gotten x-rays of his joints. The images showed severe damage from being forced to lift heavy weights since he was 6 years old. His knees, shoulders, and spine all showed signs of repetitive stress injuries that would probably need surgery eventually. He said seeing the actual damage in black and white was breaking through years of Mom's programming. He was finally getting angry at what she'd done to his body in the name of making him the strong one. He was thinking about giving a statement to the police, but was still scared about what would happen to Natalie if he turned against Mom completely. Detective Bridges called me 2 days later about trying to get a search warrant for Dr. Benson's office. She explained the process was moving slowly since technically he hadn't done anything illegal yet. Being threatened as a tool for Mom's plans wasn't enough for most judges to approve a warrant. She needed more evidence of actual intent or preparation for the procedure Mom had threatened. I understood but felt frustrated that we couldn't just stop him before something bad happened. The whole legal system seemed designed to wait until after crimes happened instead of preventing them. That same afternoon, I got back to my dorm after meeting with Linnea and found something weird. A folded piece of paper had been pushed under my door while I was gone. My hands shook as I opened it and read the words written in familiar handwriting. "Dumb girls who run away get hurt" was all it said, but I recognized Mom's way of making her letters. I called campus security right away, and Officer Nash came to collect the note as evidence. Security spent hours reviewing camera footage from the hallway, but whoever left it had avoided all the cameras. They knew exactly where the blind spots were, which meant they'd been watching and planning. Nash increased patrols near my building and suggested I vary my routes to class. The next morning, my backpack felt heavier than usual when I picked it up for class. I couldn't figure out why since I hadn't added any new books or supplies. I dumped everything out on my bed and started checking all the pockets and compartments. That's when I found it sewn into the lining at the bottom. Someone had cut open the fabric, inserted a small GPS tracker, and sewn it back up. The stitching was neat and almost invisible, but I could feel the hard plastic device inside. Detective Bridges came to collect it and said she'd have it checked for fingerprints. She added stalking charges to the growing list of crimes we were building against Mom. The tracker looked expensive and had probably been transmitting my location for days. Later that week, I got some good news from the registrar's office. The university agreed to let me re-enroll provisionally for 2 classes while all the legal stuff got sorted out. It wasn't the full course load I wanted, but having some normal routine helped me feel more grounded. Taking Introduction to Psychology and English Composition proved I was capable of college college work. My professors were understanding when Leandra explained my situation to them privately. They offered extensions on assignments when I had court dates or police meetings. Balancing the coursework with everything else quickly became overwhelming though. Some days I'd go straight from a police interview to class to a meeting with Linnea. My brain felt pulled in too many directions and I struggled to focus on homework. The support group helped me manage the stress, but I still felt like I was drowning sometimes. 3 weeks after the evaluation, we finally got the decision about Mom's emergency guardianship petition. The evaluator's report was clear and direct about my complete competence. The judge denied Mom's petition and seemed genuinely concerned by all the evidence we'd presented. He scheduled a full hearing for a permanent restraining order and asked Detective Bridges to keep investigating. Mom didn't take the denial well, according to what I heard from my siblings. That night, Natalie sent me a scared text using our secret code. Mom had told her that if she testified against her, she'd destroy Natalie's hands so she could never write or type again. Natalie was thinking about running away but didn't know where to go or how to survive on her own. She'd never been allowed to have a job or learn basic life skills. I immediately told Linnea and Detective Bridges about the threat to Natalie. They connected us with a social worker named Justina Wilkerson, who specialized in helping abuse victims escape safely. Justina started working with my siblings to plan safe exits when they were ready. She gave them information about shelters and transportation resources through coded messages. The hard part was overcoming years of psychological control that made them afraid to leave. Mom had convinced them they couldn't survive without her, even while she destroyed them. 2 days later, I got a call that made me cry with relief and worry at the same time. Eden had finally escaped to a women's shelter after Mom discovered she'd been secretly talking to me. Mom had found Eden's hidden phone and started screaming about betrayal and breaking the ecosystem. Eden grabbed a bag of clothes and ran out while Mom was destroying the phone. She called me from the shelter crying, but also sounding relieved for the first time in years. She said she couldn't take the forced starvation anymore and had finally chosen her life over Mom's approval. The shelter was keeping her location secret and helping her get medical attention for the damage from years of malnutrition. Within hours, Mom had called the police to report Eden as a kidnapped runaway. She claimed I'd brainwashed Eden and forced her to leave home against her will. Detective Bridges quickly confirmed with the shelter that Eden was an adult who had left voluntarily. The false report added another mark to the pattern of harassment and control Mom kept displaying. Bridges said every lie Mom told to authorities just made our case stronger. Mom was destroying her own credibility by making these desperate moves to regain control. Meanwhile, Eden was finally eating regular meals without someone monitoring every bite. She told me the shelter staff were shocked by how underweight she was for her height. They connected her with doctors who specialized in helping people recover from eating disorders. Eden said it felt weird to eat without guilt, but she was determined to get healthy. She wanted to be strong enough to testify about what Mom had done to all of us. Linnea started putting together a civil harassment claim the next morning based on all the online stuff Mom had been doing, pulling up screenshots of the posts claiming I was mentally ill and dangerous, documenting every fake account she'd made to spread lies about me, tracking down the original doxing post that had my dorm address. She spread papers across her desk showing how Mom had posted on parent forums saying I was a runaway with severe brain damage who needed to be returned home for medical care, created fake missing person flyers with my photo claiming I had the mental capacity of a 5-year-old, even made a website called Help Bring Lila Home full of made-up stories about my supposed disabilities. Linnea explained that having both criminal and civil cases would create multiple ways to stop Mom's behavior, since different courts could issue different kinds of orders with different penalties. While she worked on that, Dr. Kimura called with the hair analysis results, and I could hear the shock in her voice as she explained that the tests showed I'd been exposed to sedatives consistently for at least 4 years, with levels that suggested someone had been deliberately drugging me, rather than giving me any kind of real medical treatment. The concentration patterns in different sections of my hair created a timeline showing the drugging had started around when I turned 14 and continued right up until I escaped to college, with the highest levels during the past year when Mom must have increased the doses to keep me confused as I got older. Dr. Kimura said she'd never seen anything like it outside of criminal poisoning cases and was preparing a detailed report that would strengthen any criminal charges significantly. That same afternoon, a letter arrived from Dr. Benson's office claiming they had no record of any planned procedures for me and denying any discussions with my mother about medical interventions, but Linnea noticed the careful wording that avoided actually saying he'd never talked to Mom about it at all. How did Eden know exactly when to grab her stuff and run while Mom was busy breaking the phone? The timing seemed so perfect, like she'd been planning that exact moment to escape for ages. The letter kept using phrases like no formal consultations and no scheduled appointments that sounded like legal protection rather than actual denial, and it mentioned their office's commitment to appropriate medical ethics 3 different times, which Linnea said showed consciousness of guilt. Detective Bridges came up with an idea to get more evidence and had me call Dr. Benson's office while she recorded everything, coaching me to ask general questions about whether they ever did house calls or private procedures. Dr. Benson himself got on the phone, and while he didn't admit to anything specific about me, he mentioned that his practice sometimes handled difficult cases requiring discretion and private procedures for families with special circumstances, which Bridges said was enough to investigate his medical license and subpoena his records. 2 days later, Miles called me crying because he'd torn something in his knee during one of Mom's forced training sessions, where she'd made him carry 200 pounds up and down stairs for 3 hours straight. The doctor at urgent care said he needed surgery and would be on crutches for at least 2 months, which meant he physically couldn't do the crazy strength exercises Mom demanded anymore. He told me the injury was almost a relief because it gave him an excuse to stop being Mom's enforcer. While he figured out how to get away, though I could hear the pain in his voice from both a physical injury and years of joint damage. Justina had been working with him to arrange transportation to a men's shelter whenever he was ready to leave, setting up a whole escape plan with a volunteer who would pick him up during one of his physical therapy appointments, so Mom wouldn't know he was gone until hours later. But Miles kept hesitating because he was terrified about what Mom might do to Natalie if both he and Eden were gone, saying he couldn't abandon our sister to face Mom's rage alone, even though staying was destroying his body. He'd been the enforcer for so long that the guilt of leaving Natalie unprotected was eating him alive, and Justina had to keep reminding him that he couldn't protect anyone if Mom completely destroyed his ability to walk. A week later, I was walking to class when I noticed someone in a big coat and sunglasses following me across campus, and even though the disguise included a wig and different clothes, I recognized Mom's walk instantly from years of watching for her mood changes. I texted Officer Nash immediately immediately and kept walking toward the campus security office while Mom got closer, her hand reaching into her bag for something I couldn't see. Nash intercepted her right outside the library, and when Mom tried to claim she was just a concerned parent checking on her daughter, Nash reminded her about the no trespass order and called for backup. Watching Nash put handcuffs on Mom while she screamed about her parental rights felt like something out of a dream after all the years of Mom having complete control over every aspect of our lives. Mom got charged with criminal trespass and violating a restraining order, and the prosecutor said this arrest would help our case significantly since it showed Mom couldn't respect legal boundaries. 3 weeks later, at the permanent restraining order hearing, the neighbor from near the farmhouse testified about hearing screaming at all hours and seeing medical supply trucks making deliveries that seemed excessive for a regular family. She described finding me once when I was 15, stumbling around confused in her yard because the pills Mom gave me had made me so dizzy I'd gotten lost, and how Mom had dragged me home saying I was severely disabled and prone to wandering. Combined with all our other evidence, including the birth certificates with our assigned roles, the drugging evidence, and Mom's repeated violations, the judge looked more and more disturbed as the hearing went on. The judge granted a 3-year restraining order with terms so strict that Mom couldn't contact us directly or through third parties, couldn't come within 500 feet of us, and couldn't post about us online. Mom's lawyer argued it was excessive for a mother trying to help her children, but the judge said the pattern of abuse and recent violations showed a serious ongoing threat that required maximum protection. Within days, Mom filed a defamation lawsuit claiming I was lying about everything and destroying her reputation with false allegations of abuse, seeking damages for emotional distress, and demanding I publicly recant my delusions about being drugged and controlled. Linnea just laughed when she saw the lawsuit and immediately started preparing an anti-slap motion to get it dismissed, explaining that this kind of retaliation was common from abusers trying to silence their victims through legal intimidation. 2 weeks later, the courtroom was packed when the judge ruled on Linnea's anti-slap motion, and I watched Mom's face turn red as he said her lawsuit was clearly meant to silence me from speaking about my own abuse experiences. The judge ordered her to pay all my legal fees within 30 days and warned that any future lawsuits would be seen as harassment, while Mom's lawyer tried to argue this was about protecting a mother's reputation, but the judge wasn't buying it at all. Detective Bridges called me that same afternoon saying she finally got approval for the search warrant based on everything we'd given her, plus the neighbor's testimony and some new information from other families who'd dealt with Dr. Benson. She warned me they'd be searching the farmhouse the next morning looking for medical supplies, drugs that weren't prescribed to anyone, and any documentation of Mom's ecosystem system, and asked if there was anything specific they should look for. I told her about the filing cabinet in Mom's bedroom, where she kept all our development charts, tracking how well we stayed in our assigned roles, and the locked box under her bed, where she stored the pills she made me take. The search team found way more than even I expected, including detailed notebooks dating back to our births, where Mom had written daily observations about how to keep us in our roles, bottles of prescription sedatives with no patient names, and 17 different tracking devices she'd been planning to use on us. They also found printed emails between Mom and Dr. Benson discussing cognitive adjustment procedures for problem children and receipts for medical equipment that had no legitimate use in a regular home. The evidence room photos Detective Bridges showed me later made my stomach turn, seeing it all laid out on tables with evidence tags, especially the syringes and vials Mom had been collecting for whatever she'd been planning next. Within hours of the search, Mom got arrested at her motel for assault, stalking, and child endangerment based on what they found, and Detective Bridges said Dr. Benson was also under investigation after they discovered he'd been doing these special procedures on other families too. Mom's mugshot showed her still trying to look composed, but you could see the rage in her eyes that her perfect system was finally being exposed to everyone. Miles got brought in for questioning the next day about his role in bringing me back from campus, and I felt sick knowing he might get in trouble for something Mom forced him to do. The detective who interviewed him called me afterward saying they weren't pressing charges because it was clear Miles was also a victim who'd been threatened and manipulated, which seemed to help him finally start accepting that what Mom did to all of us was abuse. Eden went to the police station that week to give a sworn statement about the diet pills and forced starvation, showing them photos from when she was at her thinnest, and medical records from multiple fainting episodes Mom had was ignored. Natalie sent in a written declaration with photos of her burned paintings and detailed descriptions of the punishments she got for showing any artistic talent, plus witness statements from 2 former neighbors who'd seen the smoke from Mom burning her art. Their courage in speaking up made the case so much stronger, and the prosecutor said having all 4 siblings confirming the abuse pattern made it nearly impossible for Mom to claim this was just one troubled child making things up. Mom posted bail 3 days later and immediately started showing up at the courthouse during my hearings for the restraining order appeals, standing exactly 501 feet away, which was technically outside the order, but clearly meant to scare me. Each time she appeared, campus security or court officers would document it with photos and measurements, building more evidence that she couldn't respect boundaries even when facing serious criminal charges. The trauma started hitting me hard once the immediate danger passed, and I found myself jumping whenever someone walked behind me or unable to sleep because every sound made me think Mom had found a way around the restraining order. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. in full panic thinking I heard her voice or smelled the medicine smell from those pills she used to force down my throat, even though logically I knew she couldn't get near me. Leandra helped me get on the waiting list for trauma therapy through the University Counseling Center, but they said it could be weeks before a spot opened up because so many students needed help. She also connected me with an online support group for family abuse survivors, which helped just knowing other people understood what it was like to be afraid of your own mother. Prosecutor Laurel Atkins called a meeting with me and Linnea to discuss a plea deal he was considering offering Mom, where she'd plead guilty to assault and stalking in exchange for dropping the more serious charges. He explained that trials are really hard on victims having to testify and relive everything in detail, and this deal would guarantee she'd get probation with mandatory psychiatric treatment plus a long-term no-contact order with all of us. Finding medical supply trucks making regular deliveries to a regular house makes me wonder just how many people noticed something wrong but never asked questions about what was happening inside that farmhouse. The terms included 3 years probation where any violation would mean immediate jail time, mandatory therapy twice a week that she'd have to pay for herself, and a 10-year restraining order covering all 4 of us kids with no exceptions for holidays or family events. I called my siblings that night and we talked for hours about whether to support the plea deal, with Miles saying saying he just wanted it over. Eden worried Mom would find a way around any restrictions, and Natalie thinking the therapy might actually help Mom understand what she'd done to us. We finally agreed that our safety mattered more than seeing Mom get the maximum punishment, and that having a guaranteed outcome was better than risking a trial where something could go wrong. 2 days later, we all sent letters to the prosecutor saying we supported the plea deal, and Mom pleaded guilty in court to assault and stalking, while the judge made sure she understood she was agreeing to stay away from all of us for a decade. The news about Dr. Benson came through Detective Bridges, who called to tell me that after our case made the local news, 3 other families had contacted the medical board about him suggesting weird treatments for their kids that weren't normal medical procedures. The board suspended his license right away while they investigated everything, and Bridges said he'd probably never practice medicine again, which meant Mom had lost her main medical person, who would have actually done those horrible things she threatened. Eden texted me a week later that she'd found a small apartment just 2 blocks from campus, using some money our grandmother had left us that Mom never knew about, and she was finally eating real meals again after years of being starved. She said her body was slowly remembering what normal felt like, and she'd gotten on the waiting list for eating disorder therapy at the student health center, even though it might take months to get in. Miles sent me a text saying he'd started going to physical therapy for all the damage to his joints from being forced to lift weights since he was 6, and the therapist was shocked at how bad everything was. He also wrote that he'd joined a support group for men who'd been abused, and he was sorry for helping Mom that day in my dorm room, even though he knew I probably couldn't forgive him yet. I appreciated him trying to make things right, even if I wasn't ready to fully trust him again after what happened. Natalie called me one afternoon to say she'd gotten a job at the art supply store downtown, and had started painting again in the back room during her breaks where nobody could see her. She wasn't ready to show anyone her work yet because Mom burning her paintings still haunted her, but just holding a brush again made her feel more like herself. The financial aid office finally processed my dependency override after weeks of paperwork and meetings where I had to prove Mom shouldn't have control over my education anymore. They reinstated my full financial aid package and put permanent blocks on all my records, so Mom could never access them again, which meant I could register for full-time classes next semester without worrying about her interfering. My siblings and I started texting each other using a mix of our old secret language from when we were kids and normal conversation because we all needed to stay connected, but also respect that we were all dealing with trauma differently. Eden was focusing on her physical recovery, while Natalie was rebuilding her creative side, and Miles was working through his guilt about being Mom's enforcer all those years. I finally got off the waiting list for therapy and met with a counselor who specialized in family trauma and control issues. She listened to my whole story without judgment and told me that what Mom did was severe psychological and physical abuse, not just strict parenting like Mom always claimed. That night after therapy, I actually slept through the whole night for the first time since escaping. No nightmares about Mom finding me or waking up in panic thinking I heard her voice. The prosecutor called to tell me that at Mom's first probation check-in, the officer had to warn her because she'd tried to contact us through a cousin who'd called Eden, asking why we were being so cruel to our mother. The probation officer documented the violation and told Mom that any more attempts would mean immediate jail time, which made me feel like the system was actually protecting us for once. Eden, Natalie, and I decided to meet for coffee at a little shop near campus, which was the first time the 3 of us had been together without Mom controlling every word and action. We were all damaged in different ways, with Eden still too thin, and Natalie's hands shaking slightly, and me still checking over my shoulder constantly, but we were learning what it meant to just exist as ourselves. Eden ordered a full meal without counting calories while Natalie doodled on napkins, and I talked about my classes without pretending to be stupid. We stayed for 3 hours just being normal sisters for the first time in our lives, no roles to play or punishments to fear. Walking to my morning English class the next week, I realized I wasn't checking behind me every few steps or planning escape routes in case Mom showed up. The sun felt warm on my face and other students were rushing past me to get to their classes, and I was just another college kid heading to learn something new. I sat in the front row and raised my hand to answer a question about the reading without worrying that being smart would get me hurt. The professor smiled when I gave my answer and said I'd made an excellent point which would have earned me a beating at home, but here just meant I understood the material. After class, I walked to the library to study for my psychology exam without hunching my shoulders to look smaller or shuffling my feet to seem less capable. Other students were studying around me, and I pulled out my textbooks and highlighters like this was totally normal, like I belonged here just as much as anyone else. The dumb one was taking college courses and making friends who knew me as just Lila, not as someone's assigned role in a sick family ecosystem. I had a future that Mom said I could never have, and even though we all had a long way to go in healing, we were finally free to become whoever we actually were instead of who she'd decided we had to be. Well, folks, that's all for today's commentary adventure. Thanks for letting me sprinkle in my observations along the way. Until our paths cross again, stay sharp. If you made it to the end, drop a comment. I love reading all your comments.